Hello and welcome to More Time in the Kitchen. So if you are a regular viewer, you might realise that something looks a little bit different. No, it's not my hair, although I have had it done, thanks for noticing. No, it is a brand new kitchen. It's a totally different kitchen. If you've been keeping up, then you'll know that I have moved house. So yep, this will be my new location for the foreseeable future. And in this video I am going to be doing something a little bit different, a little bit new. I'm going to be doing not my own recipe, but a recipe from Mrs. Beaton's book of household management. So this is obviously new and shiny, but the original print was in 1861, so Victorian Britain. And this is just excerpts from the book. You can read the entire thing if you want. It's available for public access, so if you give it a Google you can find a e-version to peruse at your own leisure. And it's not just a recipe book, it is like it's like an encyclopedia of how to run a household in Victorian Britain. So to read it nowadays is quite sort of amusing, some of the stuff in there, but in Victorian times it would have been very useful. So there's all sorts of stuff in there. There's stuff about staffing, and how to pay staff, like what you should pay what person, and what else. There is stuff on like first aid, there's stuff on raising children, all sorts in there, so it would have been a very, very useful book. But yes, there are a lot of recipes in this book and I'm going to give one a go today. So the recipes they're not really like modern recipes, they're a bit different, not quite what we're used to. First thing that I noticed, and you'll also notice if you decide to peruse a copy, is that the names are a bit unimaginative. So this recipe that I'm making today is just called a nice useful cake. Nothing about what's in the cake, nothing about the type of cake, it's just nice and useful. I suppose it's fair enough, but yeah, it doesn't really tell you what's in it. Essentially it is a fruit cake, like we need 2 of those in one kitchen. Oh, I'm so funny. The other thing about the recipes is that they can be a bit vague, which you'll see as we go through the recipe. There's some details missing, which I've had to, suss out for myself. So, yes, the recipe is going to be a bit of a challenge. The other challenge that I've got today is that I haven't actually used the oven that I'm going to use yet, because, like I say, I've just moved house and I've not used the oven yet. I've used the hob, but not the oven. So yeah, what could possibly go wrong? Anyway, let's get cooking. So my first challenge was to convert all of the measurements into something that I work with, which is grams. I know some people still use pounds and ounces, but I don't, I use grams. So here we have 115 grams of butter, 170 grams of currants, 115 grams of sugar, 450 grams of plain flour, 2 teaspoonfuls of baking powder, 3 eggs, 55 grams of almonds, and 25 grams of candied peel. And one measurement which I'm really not sure of is a teacup full of milk. Now, I suppose a Victorian teacup would have been quite small, very small and dainty, so I've gone with 3/4 of a cup of milk. So we'll see how we get on with that, and I'll try to tell by eye whether that looks a little bit dry or a bit too damp. We'll see how we go. So the first thing that you would tend to see in a modern cake recipe would be instructions to preheat your oven with a temperature included. Of course, in this recipe, no mention of a temperature. So I am going to go for 160 degrees because I know we're going to be baking it low and slow. Fingers crossed that's fine. The next thing you would tend to see is instructions to grease your tin, and somewhere there would usually be a size of tin mentioned. Of course, no mention of that. So I am going to go for a 8-inch round cake tin. So just got a bit of butter in there. Just rub it around, get it well greased. So that is one well buttered tin. Now the first actual instruction that we get from the book is to beat the butter to a cream. Now I'll just mention here that the way that this is going to be made in this recipe is probably not quite how I would do things if I was making a cake myself, if I was doing my own recipe. But for the purposes of research, I'm going to go with what it says. So yes, first we are going to beat the butter to a cream. So I'm using this massive metal ladle instead of a wooden spoon because I forgot that I threw out my wooden spoon because it was getting a little bit worse for wear. It was starting to get some little splinters, and I forgot to buy one when I moved house. I've got no proper excuse or reason for using this thing. Don't recommend using it because it's proven a bit difficult. The butter's also a little bit hard because it's kind of a cold day. And thanks to the application of a little elbow grease, the butter is now light and creamy. Now the next instruction is to wash, pick and dry the currants. But now, because it's 2019, this has been done already by someone in a factory. So we'll not bother about that. Next is whisk the eggs, which I'm going to get some electric whisks for. Now again, there's no instruction on how long to whisk the eggs for. So I'm just going to whisk them until they look pale. So the eggs are now looking pale and they've nearly doubled in volume. Next we have blanch and chop the almonds and cut the peel into neat slices. Again, already done by a person or machine in a factory somewhere, so we don't have to worry about that. Then, when all these are ready, mix the dry ingredients together. Right, let's do that then. So dry ingredients, we have got flour, sugar, currants, and the baking powder and peel. Just needs a little help coming off. There we go. Then we are going to add butter, milk and eggs and beat the mixture well for a few minutes. Let's get the butter in there first. And so I'll add the eggs. And I'm going to add about half of the milk and then see where we are. Because again, I don't know how much milk I'm really supposed to use here. Oh, this is a pretty hefty cake. Okay, I'm definitely going to need the rest of that milk, and I might even need some more. See how we get on with that amount. So it's still very stodgy, so I'm just going to add another little bit of milk. So that will bring us a bit closer to a whole cup. So if you don't want to make it yourself, I would go with a whole cup. Let's see how we get on with this. Still struggling. So what we have now is a very stodgy mixture. Now, this is, as I say, a fruit cake, so it is going to be stodgy. It's not something light and airy like a Victoria sponge or whatever. So that, I imagine, is right. So let's hope we can do Mrs. Beaton proud. We'll get this in the tin and into the oven. So Mrs. Beaton tells us to bake it for rather more than 1.5 hours, by which I think she means at least. So we shall give that a go, see how it gets on, have a look at it after 1.5 hours. She also says the currants and candied peel may be omitted and a little lemon or almond flavouring substituted for them. Made in this manner, the cake will be found very good. Now the cake is out of the oven. I'm just letting it cool a little bit before I put it onto a cooling rack and then onto a cake plate and then into my mouth. I can tell you now that it smells amazing. It smells really nice. I am a little bit disappointed that I've got a kind of dome shaped. I would have thought it would be a little bit more flat. Maybe that's how Mrs. Beaton would have expected it to come out, not sure, but a modern fruit cake would be a bit more flat and not quite as cracked, or not a big crack like that. They do tend to sometimes have a little bit of a cracked surface, but not like a big dome like that. So that could be because the oven temperature was too high, so I would maybe have it at 150 degrees and bake it over a slower time, a longer time. Now I'm afraid I'm going to be a little bit of a tease. I'm not going to taste it in this video. Obviously that's where the real test is, but yes, I will be doing that next Sunday. That will come out. Obviously for me it's going to be in about half an hour once this has cooled down a bit, but for you next Sunday, and that's obviously, you know, where the real test comes in. It's the taste that's important at the end of the day, isn't it? So we'll see if the recipe lives up to Mrs. Beaton's standards then. But for now, please let me know if you would like me to do any more recipes like this, like historical recipes or kind of weird and wonderful recipes even. But for now, cheerio, bye. Look at all that gluten.